At first, I didn't think anything of it. I've worked overnight at gas stations for about 4 years now, different locations, same general routine, and if you do this job long enough, you get used to weird stuff happening around 3 or 4 a.m. Drunk people, truckers who've been awake too long, the occasional person just wandering in off the highway for no reason. So when I heard my name come over the intercom that first night, I genuinely just assumed it was my manager messing with me from the back office. The station I work at has an intercom system that connects the front counter to the back stockroom and the manager's office. Plus, there's a paging function that's supposed to go out to the gas pumps outside, mostly so we can tell people their card got declined or whatever, without having to walk all the way out there. I heard a voice, kind of flat and quiet, say my name. Just my first name once. I looked over at the back office door. It was locked. My manager wasn't even scheduled that night. I was the only person in the building. I brushed it off. I figured maybe it was some kind of automated glitch, a stuck recording, something like that. I've heard weirder things come out of old speaker systems. I went back to restocking the cigarette case and didn't think much more about it until about 40 minutes later, when it happened again. Same voice, same flat tone, my name, once. This time, I walked straight over to the intercom panel and checked it. The panel showed no active line, nothing lit up, nothing indicating a call had gone through on any channel. I called my manager the next morning, more out of curiosity than actual concern, and asked if maybe there was some new automated feature I didn't know about, or if someone had access to page from a phone remotely. He laughed and told me the intercom system was original to the building, installed sometime in the 90s. No remote capability, no automation, nothing like that. He said if anything, it barely worked at all, that we'd been meaning to replace it for over a year because half the time it just produced static. I let it go. I told myself I was tired, that 4 a.m. does weird things to your head, that maybe it was some interference from a nearby radio frequency. Truckers use CB radios, and I know odd frequency bleed can happen sometimes near electronics. It wasn't a great explanation, but it was good enough to make it through another night. The next night, it happened 3 times. Always my name, always once, always when I was completely alone in the store. No customers, no cars in the lot. The third time, it wasn't just my name. There was a pause after, and then the voice said, low and slow, "Come to the back." I stood there behind the counter for a long time, just staring at the office door. I told myself I wasn't going to go check it out, that whatever was happening with that intercom wasn't my problem to solve, that I was going to finish my shift and deal with it during daylight hours when things made more sense. I actually managed to convince myself of that for almost 20 minutes. But the thing about working alone overnight is that eventually you have to go into the back. I needed more register tape, and the only box of it was in the stock room, which sits directly behind the manager's office, connected by an interior door that's usually propped open during the day and shut at night for security reasons. I unlocked it, told myself I was being ridiculous, and walked back there with my phone flashlight on, even though the overhead lights were working fine. The stockroom was exactly how it always looks: boxes, shelving, the register tape sitting right where it should be. I grabbed it and turned to leave, and that's when I noticed the door to the manager's office, which I definitely remembered being closed and locked, was open about a foot. I could see the outline of the desk inside, the manager's computer screen glowing faintly, even though it should have been off. I didn't go in. I want to be honest, I didn't check, I didn't investigate. I just grabbed the tape and left and locked the interior door behind me and spent the rest of that shift standing near the front windows where the parking lot lights made everything feel more normal. I told my manager everything the next day: the pages, the voice, the open office door, all of it. He didn't laugh this time. He told me that door has a lock that sticks and that it's basically impossible for it to just swing open on its own, especially since he was the one who locked it himself before leaving the previous afternoon and hadn't been back since. I asked to be moved to a different location after that. It took a couple weeks, but I eventually got transferred to a store on the other side of town. I still work graveyard shifts. I still hear the occasional weird noise, because that's just part of the job, but I've never heard my name paged again, not since I left that store, and I've made a point of never asking anyone who works there now if they've heard anything either. Some things I'd rather not confirm. I never used to take my job that seriously until one specific night made me realize just how little I actually understood about the building I was supposed to be protecting. I worked as an overnight security guard at an old industrial complex that had been converted into storage units and a few small business offices, the kind of place where half the units are empty and the other half nobody really checks on. Part of my job during the walkthrough rounds was checking a series of doors throughout the building, most of them just regular locked doors leading to storage units or utility rooms. But there was one door at the very end of the east hallway that was different. It had been welded shut, not locked, welded. There was a metal seam running along the entire frame where someone had sealed it permanently at some point before I even started the job. When I got trained, the previous guard walked me through the whole route, and when we got to that door he just said, "Oh, you don't need to check this one, it's sealed, just confirm the seal from a distance and move on." I asked why it was welded shut instead of just locked like everything else, and he kind of shrugged and said something about an old insurance issue, some incident before his time, and that it wasn't really his business to ask more than that. I figured that was a good enough answer for a job that paid barely above minimum wage. I wasn't about to dig into the history of a building I didn't own. For about 8 months, that door was a non-issue. I'd walk by it every round, glance at the weld line, confirm it looked intact, and keep moving. It became such a routine part of the walkthrough that I basically stopped consciously registering it, the same way you stop noticing a picture frame that's been on your wall for years. Then one night in October, I came around the corner into the east hallway, and the door was standing open, not cracked open, fully open, swung all the way back against the wall, and I could see straight into a completely dark room that I had never once looked into in 8 months of working there. I stood at the end of that hallway for a solid minute just staring at it. My first thought wasn't fear, honestly, it was confusion, because a welded door doesn't open. There's no hinge mechanism that allows that once the frame's been sealed. I walked closer, slowly, and I could see the weld line was still there along most of the frame, except for a section near the bottom that looked like it had been broken apart, torn rather than cut, like something had forced its way through from the inside rather than someone opening it from the outside. I radioed my supervisor, told him what I was looking at, and he told me flatly not to go in, to just note it in the log and continue my round, and that maintenance would deal with it in the morning. I asked him if he knew what was actually in that room, and he was quiet for a second before saying he genuinely didn't know that the door had already been welded shut when the current ownership took over the building, and nobody currently working there had ever seen inside it. I finished the rest of my round that night, giving that hallway a wide berth, and every time I passed the intersection that led toward it, I could hear something. Not loud, just a scraping sound, slow and deliberate, like something dragging itself across a concrete floor, coming from somewhere back in that dark room. By the time my shift ended around 6 a.m., the sound had stopped, and when the day crew came in, I told them exactly what I'd seen and heard. Maintenance went in later that morning with proper lighting and apparently found the room completely empty. Just bare concrete, no furniture, nothing that explained the sound or how the weld had broken from the inside. They re-welded the door that same day, this time reinforced with a full steel plate instead of just a seam. I asked to be moved off the night rotation and start working day shifts instead. My supervisor didn't ask why. I think he already understood. I still work there, but I've never taken another walkthrough down that east hallway after dark. And as far as I know, nobody has heard that scraping sound since the door got sealed the second time. I'd like to keep it that way. I've worked as a janitor at the same hospital for almost 6 years, mostly overnight, mopping floors and restocking supply closets and doing the kind of quiet, repetitive work that nobody notices unless it doesn't get done. Most nights are completely uneventful. Hospitals overnight are quiet in a specific way. Low lighting, the sound of monitors, the occasional page over the intercom for a doctor. You get used to the rhythm of it. Part of my route includes the 3rd floor, which during the period this happened was mostly closed off for renovations. Only a handful of rooms on that floor were still active, and the rest were empty, stripped down to bare walls, waiting on contractors. I had a master key that let me into pretty much everything on my route, including the vacant rooms, since I still had to do basic maintenance cleaning in there even though nobody was staying in them. One night, around 2 a.m., while I was restocking a supply closet near the nurses' station on the second floor, the hospital's internal phone line rang. These phones are only used for internal calls, room to room or department to department, not outside lines. I wasn't technically supposed to answer it since I'm not clinical staff, but it kept ringing and nobody else was nearby, so I picked it up. There was a woman's voice on the other end asking for help, calm but clearly distressed, saying she'd been waiting a long time and that nobody had come to check on her room. I asked what room she was in and she said 214. I told her I'd let the nursing staff know right away and hung up, figuring maybe a call got misrouted from another floor. I mentioned it to one of the night nurses at the station and she gave me a strange look and told me room 214 was on the third floor, in the section that was closed for renovations, completely unoccupied, had been for almost 2 months while they redid the plumbing in that wing. I told her that didn't make sense, given what I'd just heard, and she checked the system herself and confirmed it. No patient assigned to that room, no active line even connected to it since the renovation work had disconnected most of the internal phones on that floor. I didn't think too hard about it at first. Hospitals have weird wiring issues, crossed lines, things like that happen in old buildings, especially during renovation work. I finished my restocking and went back to my regular route, and I probably would have forgotten about it entirely if the same phone hadn't rung again about 40 minutes later. Same voice, same request, asking why nobody had come yet. This time, I asked her name and she told me, calm as anything, and then said something that stuck with me, that she'd been in that room for a very long time and that she just wanted someone to open the door. I told the charge nurse everything and she made a decision I wasn't expecting. She told me to go check the room myself, since I had access with my master key, and she'd call security to meet me up there just as a precaution, given it was an active construction zone. Walking up to the third floor alone before security arrived was probably the longest walk of my life, even though it's a route I do almost every single night without thinking about it. The floor was dark except for emergency lighting. Plastic sheeting hung over some of the hallway sections from the construction work, and it was quiet in a way that felt different from the usual overnight quiet, heavier somehow. Room 214's door was closed, same as every other vacant room on that floor. I used my master key and pushed it open, and the room was completely stripped, no bed, no furniture, exposed subflooring where the tile had been pulled up for the plumbing work. Nothing that could have made a phone call, since there wasn't even a working phone line still connected in there, just a disconnected jack hanging out of the wall where one used to be mounted. Security showed up a couple minutes later, and we did a full walk through of the whole wing together. Nothing, no one, every room empty, every door locked from the outside where they were supposed to be. The internal phone line to that room had officially been disconnected as part of the renovation, confirmed by facilities the next morning when I brought it up again. I never got another call like that, not from that room, not from anywhere on that floor. I still work my regular route. I still go up to the third floor when I need to, but I don't linger there anymore. And if a phone rings somewhere it shouldn't, I let someone else answer it now.